Hello, welcome. It is All for United, and we have got our brand new Twitter. It's sorted out properly again. All for United is back as it was, and we are looking forward to seeing you. So if you haven't got on there already, get subscribed and follow All for United on Twitter, and like and subscribe here if you can as well. We are here to review what was an absolute brilliant game. I mean, it genuinely was one of those where it flew by, especially the second half. So we're going to break that down shortly and have a little look. And at the moment, I've got two. I'm expecting three. We're hoping the third one's going to pop along at some point. But this does tend to happen. Life does get in the way. So we shall see. If they don't turn up, then we'll be relying either on you on the comments or we'll just have to let Stu and Daniel speak a little bit longer than we normally would. So that's fine. There we go. But anyway, thank you, boys, for joining us. And we'll get straight into it. No need to mess around. And I'm going to ask you, Daniel, for this one, because I've kind of asked you before on this one. Obviously, the formation came out was a little bit different to what we were expecting. Casemiro in a single pivot role, really. Fred not meant to be dropping back with him too much. But I think the surprise for everybody was Weghorst in the 10 role, sort of just behind Rashford. So what did you think about the formation and how it was that Ten Hag chose to set up against Barcelona?
So I think it worked really well. I thought Weghorst had quite a good game. I know his rating wasn't the best in terms of stats, but the eye test, he did quite well. I think formation's good and it worked, but I do think we lose a lot when Fernandes goes to that right-hand side. As much as it worked yesterday, I don't think it's something that he's going to carry on playing much beyond this season. I think he's sort of fitting people in where he can fit them for now because we're still in 4 competitions and we've got a lot riding on everything. I think it's his own success is causing these situations, to be honest. It was good to see Casemiro in a single pivot. I don't personally like Fred in defensive. I think he's excellent going forward, and he's been excellent going forward. So yeah, I think it worked quite well. I'm quite happy with the way he set up, to be honest. I think everybody saw Luke Shaw coming as left centre back. I think that was quite obvious a long way away. But again, I think we lose a lot with Shaw not playing on the left too. So fingers crossed that sort of changes. But I suppose it's just whatever needs at the minute. I think it was good. I think he got his tactics spot on. I think it was a brilliant game, to be honest. I thought it's strange seeing, even myself was really disappointed with the draw, and I think that says everything. The fact that we've gone to the Nou Camp, we've come away from the Nou Camp, and some of the fan base can't even be happy with the fact we've drew at the Nou Camp. And I think it was the disappointment of there was more to be taken, and I think that goes down to Ten Hag getting so much right yesterday.
No, absolutely. I've got to agree with you that there's the stat, isn't there, that we've never beaten Barcelona in the Nou Camp, and we so very, very nearly did. But they've held on to that record by the skin of their teeth. But what a performance it was, and absolutely a tactical masterclass, some might say. We're after you guys to decide who your player of the match is. I've got a sneaking suspicion who's going to win it, but we picked. I picked 4 players. So please send in all complaints to me if you're not happy. But the 4 players that are on the poll as we speak are Marcus Rashford, Casemiro, close your ears, Stu, David De Gea, and Fred. So those are the 4 people to choose from. I've got arguments for every single one as to why they potentially deserve to be there, and I think they're probably the standout names of the match. It's up to you guys, not just you two, but everybody else to get in there. So click on the poll. I'd love to know who your player of the match is. So there we go. But Stu, Dan was completely right, isn't he? It was one of those games where the start was amazing. We just came straight out at them. We were attacking them well. We had a good 7, 8, 9 minutes, really. Then Barcelona just sort of got into it a little bit. Fred gave away one of his dodgy free kicks on the outside of the area for Alonso to put over, which was a little bit scary. And then it all just sort of calmed down a little bit, and it was a really good matchup between 2 behemoths. It was like watching a heavyweight boxing match, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm with Daniel. I thought we played exceptionally well. Cheers, Benny, by the way. Good to see you in the comments, old friend. It's been a while. I see you growing the beard as well. Look, the couple of things that stood out for me, the Weghorst position was a bit of a masterstroke, really, because he had a really, really solid game. He got scored late because people just don't get football. They don't understand football. They don't watch football. They don't understand the intricacies of football occasionally. So, Weghorst didn't touch the ball, so he didn't do this. You forget what players do and how they drag certain players out of position. Xavi had moved Raggio, or however you pronounce his name, across to right back because he thought that's where Rashford was going to be. Rashford wasn't there. It was a very, very fluid front three, and the fluidity was really the key to how we were able to attack them from all areas of the pitch. You're absolutely right. For about 9 minutes, I thought we were excellent, and then for about 20 minutes after that, our short game just completely disappeared. And that's because Barcelona managed to make the Nou Camp, which is, if you've ever been there, it's a huge pitch. They managed to make it small. They managed to suffocate our play. It was really good play from Barcelona at that. Xavi kind of looked at what was going on and dealt with it accordingly. But I think overall, when you look at our overall play, our overall possession, our intelligence in the way that we played, it's something we've not seen for the last 18 months. So it was pretty impressive. We could have won the game. We could have lost the game. And to be honest, if we come away last night with a 3-2 loss, it would have made no difference. A 2-2 draw or a 3-2 loss is an irrelevance, believe it or not, because you still got to score. We still have to score at Old Trafford. And Barcelona, it's not in their nature to sit back. So we would, I think we'll get maybe 2, maybe 3 at Old Trafford. So whether we'd lost last night 3-2 really wouldn't have made much difference to the overall tie. I think what's going to be interesting moving forward is whether Barcelona can bring Busquets back into the side, because he was massively missed. So the way that Busquets controls Barcelona's midfield, the way that he creates their tempo, he ticks their tempo, a little bit like what Casemiro does for us. But Busquets has been doing it for a decade, probably even longer at Barcelona. So to have him back, if they do shoehorn him back with his injury, there's an outside possibility. I hear Dembele may make the bench. It'll be interesting to see just how they set up. But my lad was there last night. He said the stadium was absolutely rocking. He said it was tremendous. It's his first time at the Nou Camp, and he couldn't believe the size, of the stadium and the actual pitch itself. So you've got to give Ten Hag and the lads a lot of credit. As I say, Xavi, he had he had a flashlight poked in his eyes, didn't he, for the first 10 minutes? But it was a brilliant game of football. Brilliant game of football. I was really pleased to see us hang in there, and really we should have won. But you've got to bear something in mind when you go away to Barcelona, you go away to Real Madrid, you go away to Bayern Munich, places of that nature, AC Milan to an example, places of that nature, you're going to get punched, you're going to get hit, and you're not going to be able to dodge every swing. And we didn't dodge every swing last night. We got punched a few times, but we still stood. We didn't get counted out. We didn't even get a count against us. We stood. And I think Xavi realises that their chance, I think, has gone, purely from footballing terms. Stranger things have happened. I remember years ago, AC Milan, when they were, at the peak of their power, so to speak, were 4-0 down against Marseille, and they came back. I won the second leg 4-0, and it was a 4-4 draw, and they went into extra time. So things like this do happen. You cross that white line, you could have a bad game, you could have a really bad night, and it does happen. So I think we're in a really, really strong position. But Ten Hag at some point this season is going to have to sacrifice something, whatever that may be.
Well, there you go. I did think, like I say, it's a very interesting start. But again, Daniel, you mentioned a little bit about the left-hand side, and I wrote that in my notes because whilst we're in the process of swinging at each other, there was one bit that stood out for me in the game, where the ball comes down the right-hand side, a cross comes in, I think it was aimed towards Jadon Sancho. It just got nicked off of his boot, and it just ended up in the middle of the field, and it looked like there was no one around it. It's a bit like when you've got grease in the frying pan and you put a little bit of washing up liquid in it and you just watch the grease all run to the side. It felt a little bit like that. There was so much room. And you just mentioned about that left-hand side. It was almost as though Sancho had come in, Fred was still dropping back a bit. And Malacia at this point just hadn't quite come forward. And as a result, there just wasn't really any room. And we did recover the ball quite quickly. But you said you wouldn't expect this formation necessarily to be used again. Is that why, do you think? Because there is the possibility for people like Fred to be pulled out of the position they're meant to be in, and then that causes problems with retrieving the ball?
Well, I think it's unlikely we'll see Shaw at left centre back again because Martinez is back, so he'll go back to playing left back, I'd imagine. But just to jump on Stu's point, I think I read that Pedri and Gavi are both missing.
They're missing.
The next
Yeah,
one, so Busquets possibly could be rushed back for that. But yeah, in terms of the left, I think Ten Hag's first team, and I think this is sort of what we're talking about, his own success. We've got a big issue coming up with the next game because obviously we've got Barca and then 3 days later, Newcastle in the final. How strong do you go against Barcelona? Because we've chipped and changed it yesterday and he's played this formation and it's done really well. And we didn't have Martinez and he's probably started players like Malacia that wouldn't have started if we did. So it's an interesting one. I personally think that we should go strong against Barca and just see where the success can go. But I agree that it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough with the squad at the minute. I'm hoping Shaw stays more on the left because the partnership he's got on the left-hand side and the cover that he brings as well. And like you say, when the ball just knocks into space, we're so used to seeing Shaw being there and going on one of his little runs and first-time cross, just like against, I can't remember, it was at the weekend, the cross for the goal. He's probably one of our best players this season. He's back to his very best, and his very best is left back. And the more we can play Shaw there, the better for the team. I think that he might do a few changes against Leicester on Sunday. I can see the likes of maybe Maguire coming back in, and probably a couple more changes. Maybe Dalot back in. I was happy to see Wan-Bissaka start yesterday, so I sort of fall on the fence between these two. My preference has probably always been Dalot in terms of edging it, but Wan-Bissaka has been brilliant since he's come back in. And I think I've mentioned it before on here. Eth seems to be really settling into this. If you play well, you keep your space, you keep your spot. And I think that's brilliant. It gives the players a target to reach. So Wan-Bissaka knows he's coming in, he's done a good job, and he's going to get rewarded for it.
Absolutely. I've never had to do this before, but I feel I'd best put out the breaking news. It's hardly going to come as a surprise to anyone, but I'm going to read it out because it's a statement and I don't want to get anything wrong. But Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani today confirmed his submission of a bid for 100% of Manchester United Football Club. The bid plans to return the club to its former glories, both on and off the pitch, and above all, will seek to place the fans at the heart of Manchester United Football Club once more. The bid will be completely debt-free via Sheikh Jassim's 9-2 Foundation, which will look to invest in the football teams, training centre, stadium and wider infrastructure, the fan experience and the communities the club supports. The vision of the bid is for Manchester United Football Club to be renowned for football and excellence and regarded as the greatest football club in the world. More details of the bid will be released when appropriate, if and when the bid process develops. It's no surprise, but it sounds like that bid, well, not sounds like, it has gone in. We know there's other people that are interested. I don't really want the show to be taken over by it, but initial thoughts on, the fact that it could be goodbye Glazers, but hello, different issues.
The problem you got, Barry, is that you can count on one hand how many people will fork out 5, 6, 7 billion, because it's a 5 plus 3 billion deal. 5 billion to own 100% of the club. It'll be debt free, so the deal will be. I mean, the Glazers will walk away with 3.3, won't they? Based on that 3.2, something like that. And then the 3 is what you do with Old Trafford. People want it redeveloped. I don't think it'll stack up in terms of numbers, in terms of redeveloping it to build a new stadium. I just don't think it'll stack. So I think you'll have to rebuild. The fans and the club are in a kind of we're in a bad situation really with this, because people get to be powerful and have billions in the bank by treading on people. We all know this. You don't be a billionaire by being a nice person. You've stabbed people in the back to get where you are. And there's been some notable billionaires that, Zuckerberg did it. Bill Gates has done it. These people who are almost revered as business brains, business minds, stab people at the back at the early doors of their careers to get where they are today. And there isn't a unscrupulous billionaire, but that's just life, isn't it? When you're talking about state ownership, or this isn't state ownership, he's a former prime minister, isn't he? He's not a prime minister. He's got a vehicle, a funding vehicle, an investment vehicle, which he's heavily involved in certain investments in London. You're still going to have the moral dilemma of what goes on in that particular country. The problem that everyone has got is the Glazers won't give a fuck, quite frankly. They just want money in their bank, and they will sell to the highest bidder. And if Saudi Arabia put a bid on the table that is $1 billion more, they'll sell to Saudi Arabia. And this is, unfortunately, is the economics of football. And we can, as fans, we can scream, we can moan, we can shout, we can cry, we can do absolutely anything, and it makes no difference because it's the Glazers that are pocketing the money. And the flip side of all this is, and they'll probably bring the fans into it. I think they know they'll have to. I think they'll have to. Kind of bring the fans into it. But I tell you what, if I forked out £5 billion, I wouldn't listen to anyone. It's not like you're forking out 100 million quid. You're forking out 5 billion, and you've got to understand this. People have got to understand it. 5 billion quid. Okay, 5 billion quid. And once you let that sink in, you're not going to let anyone tell you what you can and you can't do with Manchester United. So, it is what it is. People will be happy because we're debt free. It doesn't bother me because even Apple carry debt. Apple have got a short-term debt strategy of 15.4 billion. Microsoft have debt. Everybody does debt because it's cash flow. You borrow for cash flow. It's a simple mathematics and business plan. So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm just trying
to. It's a tricky one, isn't it, Daniel? In the end of it, because gone are the days when you had Martin Edwards and the Edwards family looking after Manchester United Football Club and feeling like the person that owned the club really cared about the club. And there's been lots of them there. Dave Whelan at Wigan. There's always people that do tend to care about the club. The problem that we've got, being the club that we are, is that, like Stu just said, for that amount of money, I mean, there's rumours that the guy in charge of the Qatari bid is a United fan. We know Sir Jim's meant to be a United fan, but ultimately, it's trying to square this circle, isn't it? And it's not. Somebody's going to be upset no matter what happens here.
Yeah, you're not going to please everybody no matter what. I've got quite a unique take. So I was only lucky enough to get to Old Trafford last year for my first time. Obviously, financially, it's tough. So getting there and seeing it was brilliant. One of the notable things of being in Salford was the area itself around the stadium is not up to the standard of what you would find next to the Etihad. And I think that's quite important because the Qatari bid, from the sound of it, is not just an investment in United and Old Trafford and a bigger stadium. It sounds like they want more 5-star hotels, just a bigger business for the city itself. Now, if we ignore the allegations against the city owners, what they've actually done for the city of Manchester and the area around it is actually incredible in terms of bringing it into the now. So yeah, you're never going to please anybody. I think for me, it just falls to, and this applies to a lot of things, to be honest. You will have people sitting on iPhones on Twitter messaging about certain rights, human rights, etc., but they're messaging from an iPhone. And we all know the background of how they're made and slave labor and stuff like that. So I think Stu's spot on, to be honest. You're not going to please everybody. They're definitely going to sell to the highest bidder because it's more money in their pockets. it'll be interesting to see how the Premier League go about it. Should they be the winning bid? That would be interesting in the process, considering the issues they faced at Man City. I think the only difference you can really see between the sale of Man United and everybody else is it's so self-sufficient. They don't need owners in terms of to be pumping money in left, right, and centre. You think about the debt that we've maintained for the Glazers and the money they've taken out. It could have done, and at that we spent $1 billion on transfers in 10, 15 years. It's crazy money that this club generates. So, will it be the right owners for what every fan wants? Probably not. But will it be good for the future of the club and the city itself? I think it definitely will be.
I think the redevelopment, you're absolutely right. I think they've made it quite clear that they aim to redevelop.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas about the stadium is to build a stadium very, very close, isn't it, to Old Trafford at the moment, redevelop Old Trafford to a secondary place where people can go and play football every day and things of that nature. So that's absolutely great. You're right about the fucking irony of people.
Yeah.
You're walking down the street and you've got your Jordan 1 lows on. They were fucking built, made in a sweatshop and stuff like that. You're absolutely right, And people forget all this because it's just normal stuff, the top I'm wearing, the top you're wearing, they're made in China, sweatshops or wherever they may be. They're made,
The human brain is incredible, isn't it? It can turn off to the most serious of things if it suits your agenda as such or your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we don't like what goes on around the world. People don't, but we're one of the laziest countries in the world.
Yeah.
We are. And look, my choice isn't, although it's not state ownership, but whatever. It's to have an oil backing. Yeah, I think you're right. We don't need owners. We just need people who care about the club. Sir Jim Ratcliffe maybe would have been a better owner. Maybe, I don't know. But we can't. But there's nothing we can do about it. Is what I was saying.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I try so very hard whenever I come on these shows and whenever I'm, whenever I'm tweeting from my Samsung. I don't know if that's got human rights issues or not. But we'll another day. But whenever I'm doing it, I try hard to try and take the emotion out of it, to try and look at it logically and as carefully as I can. And I don't like the idea of being owned by Qatar. I didn't watch the World Cup. I wasn't interested in watching it with everything that was going on. I think with the rise of women's football as well, that makes it even trickier. But I just think I can't control it. And I've really questioned myself these last 48 hours as to if Qatar ended up owning Manchester United, how much would I care? What would I want to do? But I can't control it. There's nothing personally that I can do. And I feel like we're in a horrible situation where what's the alternative? How do you get to a point where we can remove it? The government's never going to turn around and just completely level everybody out again and help us to start again. This is almost like the head of the monster, I suppose.
I think what's interesting, though, sorry, Barry, just to cut you off, and something that you were saying, fella, is that businessmen of this magnitude, these people, they've done their due diligence. They'd have been in constant communication with the Premier League as well. If we bid, are we going to be ratified? I need to know now, because there's no point me pissing about, excuse the, if I'm not going to be. So they know what's going on, these guys. As I say, you're not putting 10, 50, 100 million quid across the table. You're putting 5 billion quid across the table, and you don't get to have that type of money if you don't know what you're doing. And this is the thing. And we know it's not a preferred bidder yet, but you're only going to get 3, aren't you? 4, maybe.
There's not many more. And it just comes back to I read something today that there's a possibility they might sell to a lower bid if they retain more shares in the club. And then that's a different take completely, because we just want them gone. So,
but again, would you spend 3 billion then and not own the club?
And let them stay in there. No,
it makes no commercial sense, does it? I've read this as well, but it makes no commercial. I just think it's lazy journalism. I do, because £3 billion, but you don't own the.
It's a very, very tricky one. But I'm pleased to announce that our triumvirate is about to turn into a quad, as we have got our fourth person. He's arrived. I'm not sure. Perhaps he was involved in helping to put the bids together. That's why he's with him. But Tony, lovely to have you on, mate. What's your thoughts on the news about the bids going in?
I think I've publicly said in the last few days that I'm not really enthralled, as many people are on Twitter, about the Qataris potentially taking charge. But that's obviously the moral versus obviously everything else that goes on in football. It's been a question of debate between a lot of people, even people who aren't Manchester United fans. A lot of people have spoken to me about it and gone, you know, can you really find someone who can afford Man United who's an ethical billionaire? Is there any such thing as an ethical billionaire? You know, it's a dilemma to have. Obviously, I think primarily United want a custodian of the club who has the best interests of Man United at heart. But obviously, we were all so against the World Cup, a large majority of us, because of the sports washing, obviously, debate. You know, do we want that to be brought to our club? Which it's a difficult situation to be in. Obviously, we have to look into the bids completely. And obviously, I like to think the Glazers will do their due diligence, but you know, the Glazers probably not. But you know, it's an interesting debate to have. Obviously, you know, you look at Newcastle and people putting the Qatari flags on their bios and, you know, on their Twitter names and all this stuff. Like, I think people need to understand, like, take away the glitz and the glamour of the money that's going to be brought in by them, because I understand that to a lot of people is the only factor they care about. But as Man United, a football club, you've got to also appreciate United's LGBTQ supporters came out today, obviously stating their expression of, obviously, you know, concerns and things like that regarding the Qataris taking over because of their human rights record and obviously their records in regards to that respect. So we have to look into their interests as well. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of things to consider. And I do understand that ultimately we want the Glazers to go, which I completely appreciate. I'm one of them, definitely. But what I'm saying in here is, are we trading in one devil for another, you know, in charge of the club?
I think that is, whichever road you go down, it's going to be a tricky one. As I say, it's never going to please everybody.
No.
There's going to be pros and cons with every single one of them. And people just have to make their decisions. And I'm one of them in that respect. I've seen plenty of people coming out saying, today I feel Qatari. Today I just feel confused and very unsure as to
therein lies your age group, I'm afraid, Barry.
Pardon, mate?
Therein lies your age group, unfortunately, Barry, because you're going to have I said on this channel 2 years ago, I was the first to bring up, Connor will tell you this, Barry, I was the first to bring up the notion of a legacy fan, which I am. I'm a legacy fan. I'm a 29-year-old season ticket holder. I'm a legacy fan, etc. Going since I was 7. But I said years ago that there are certain fans, certain age group of fans that the club don't care about, and unfortunately, I fit into that category because I'm old. You know, they're not interested in me. They're interested in the new FIFA generation, the new younger generation, the one that's got disposable incomes. The one that will walk around with your Jordan lows, the one that will pay £2,000 for a pair of trainers because they've just dropped on Nike's app, etc., etc., etc. That's the body that you're looking at, and that's the body of fans that are feeling Qatari and all that kind of stuff, because they don't care about anything else. They just care about their club or their rights to have a go at Spurs, Arsenal, etc., etc. in terms of bragging rights. And there's so much more to know about that, about the club, about the history of the club. But the bottom line is, and I'll go back to it, we as fans will have no say in it. We as fans must all kick up a fuss. You know, they'll give a 10-page document of what the Qataris will want to do, or the owners will do. And if I put £5 billion on the table, I'm going to stick 2 fingers up at them. Fuck off. I'll do what I want with it. And the Glazers will just... Look, 20 years ago, the Glazers rolled the dice, and they've been at the blackjack table for 20 years, and now it's just turned 21. As soon as Chelsea was sold for £2.4 billion, the Glazers knew. That's it. Great. Rub my hands together, and we're on the market a month later because they've hit 21, and for them, it's all coming, and they're going to make a lot of money out of this. A lot.
Definitely a jackpot for them when you think about how much they bought the club for. and how they managed to do it, they've definitely come up trumps. There's no doubt about that. But listen, we could rumble on about this, but this is a Barcelona review and a preview of the weekend. But we had to react to the breaking news. I'm sure as we find out more about it, there will be something else coming on again. Connor will be on Sunday anyway after the Leicester game, so I'm sure that if there's been any more developments, we will be all the way across it. And I think Benny's got the perfect final words for that particular part of the segment. All I know is that I feel Mancunian. That's all I will ever be. Now, I can never feel Mancunian. My accent gives that away, but never dies, does it? Never dies. Speaking of dying, Bruno looked like he did when he got a nice little shove on the back there by one of their players, getting ourselves back into Barcelona mode. And Wout, he had a one-on-one shot saved. Tony, as you've just come in, give us a bit of an idea of what you thought about that Barcelona game and how annoyed were you about Wout not scoring that one-on-one? Should he have scored it?
Could have, but let's be honest, ter Stegen, before that Rashford goal, he had a very good game. Like, he made a few very good saves in that game, and I just thought it's going to be one of them days where ter Stegen just saves everything. Ultimately, it didn't happen, and he did let in a goal at the near post. But, Weghorst is getting more and more of these opportunities to get a goal. And, so I said this to someone earlier who said, Weghorst looks like a bust. And I'm there, I don't think he is. I think give him a few more chances, he will come good. Will he score 15 goals a season? Probably not. But what I'm saying is, he gets in these positions where he at least has the opportunity to have these chances. Or ultimately, at a top-level club, he needs to be finishing these chances. And, it's a game of missed opportunities yesterday, I think. We were brilliant for so many periods of that game. Obviously, there were some frailties and there were things that, we could probably be better than. But attacking-wise, and obviously some of the passing we were playing, it was a completely different game to what we saw on Sunday. The ball was played on the floor for quite a large portion of the game. Our build-up was good. It was entertaining. One of the most I've had people text me going, you know what? That's one of the most entertaining football games I've seen in ages. You not hate United, but they love watching that game because it just signified what Ten Hag's all about: total attacking football from both sides, Barca and Man United. And I know people going on about the Fred handball towards the end, but if buts and maybes, we should have Koundé shouldn't have been on the pitch at that point. It's there's a lot of things to be talking about, and obviously I think Ten Hag ultimately will be, if you told him before the game, a 2-2 draw to take back to Old Trafford, he'd have been buzzing. But after watching those 90 minutes, I think the fact we've only come back with a draw says we're disappointed, but it says how far we've come that we are disappointed in that result against a Barca team that's only conceded 7 goals in the league all season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jarvis here, I didn't see what you put before we got up Mickey's bit. I thought this was going to be one of those where at the end it goes, your boys took one hell of a beating. But it wasn't. You were just letting us know that Qatar owns the world. So thanks for that, Jarvis. I missed that first bit. It confused me verily. Daniel, something I really noticed that caught my eye in that game is that the set pieces that Manchester United are taking are so much more different and so much more varied than they have been previously. We're going short, we're trying tricky little things. We're not just always trying to get it, never beating the first man on the corner. Have you noticed that, how we're sort of having a bit more trickery and wizardry with our set
I've
pieces?
noticed it a little bit more. I thought it was I made a joke to myself actually, because we had a centre-back taking a corner at one point. I can remember last time that happened, it didn't go down as well. I think it was Phil Jones taking them. But yeah, I've noticed they're a bit more varied. It's quite good because obviously we brought in the set-piece coach last year and he's starting to do a lot better than he was at the time. I think having Wout Weghorst helping as well, because he takes the attention of quite a few people. And then not only that, is switching the corner takers is quite good. It's just letting the players do what they want to do in terms of a bit more freedom. So I've noticed it just recently. He's letting them be a bit more brave, not only at set pieces, but just in general play. Casemiro gave the ball away for the second goal yesterday. And it's because he was trying to play a pass that you probably wouldn't have tried to play 10 games ago, because he was trying to be that more attacking. So I think he sort of let them off the leash a little bit. Fernandes coming up with ideas, sure, got a decent delivery. I just can't wait to see Maguire score an header. I'll be chuffed.
Yeah.
It needs to happen. It really does.
That second half, though, that was the big one. The first half was good, but it was just merely an appetizer for the entree that was coming in. Because my God, what a second half that was! 4 goals, it had everything. Kicks off with a couple of banging chances. Sancho had a one-on-one opportunity as well. He's went wide. Rafinha had a shot that whistled past the post. And just as you're all getting into the game, all of a sudden they get a corner. And that corner swings in. Looks like Fred maybe should have stood with Alonso. I couldn't really see any other defensive dramas. So I'm going to throw it over to Stu. I'm going to presume you're going to take one of 3 options here. You're either going to go for A, it's Fred, B, David De Gea should have come out for the cross, or C, it was just a very good corner. I'm very intrigued as to whether it's going to be one of those 3.
It's a very good corner because if you consider where we were, most of the players, the bulk of the players congregated towards the near post. Good old Alonso decides to stroll in at the rear post. Old Fred's, he's not really, when you look at where Fred positions himself on corners, he's not in the melee. He never has been in the melee. Xavi's seen this. So they've all congregated at the front. The ball comes leaping over and there's Alonso bank. It's a very, very good corner. Everybody's having a pop at Fred saying Fred was ball watching, blah, 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 blah. You have to sometimes concede, okay, that the opposition can play football as well. And that's what they've done. It was a brilliant corner. De Gea really should have noticed what was going on. The thing with De Gea's position, he was okay. He was middle of the corner goal. He was okay. But the trouble with the goalkeeper is, and most centre halves, is you're concentrating on the corner kick, and you're doing that for a reason. You're trying to judge the flight. As soon as it leaves his foot, you're trying to judge the flight. So you're then trying to adjust your position so you're in the best position to clear it. Nobody expected it to be so deep. Nobody expected Barcelona to put such a deep corner in, except Barcelona and the players. And so you can say Fred was caught cold. I wouldn't have had a pop at him. If I was on that pitch, I wouldn't have had a pop at him at all. You've just been caught out in a decent kick. Second half, the fact Weghorst attempt, by the way, Tony's right to an extent, because he almost tripped, stumbled, and looked at the linesman at the same time. Okay, and that was a big issue. And also ter Stegen, and this is where I agree with you, Tony, his position was brilliant. He was about 7-8 yards off his goal line, and it was very, very quick to close it down. So because Weghorst was tripping and stumbling a little bit, his main choice, which would have been to guide it slightly over Weghorst, ter Stegen, because the way ter Stegen came out, because Stegen made himself quite big, and it would have been a difficult one. Ter Stegen could have even saved it the way that he did Rashford's, because Rashford tried to guide it, but again, Rashford was like leaning towards the left to try and get the swerve on it. So I don't think he hit it cleanly. I don't think it was a bad miss at all, if I'm being honest. He got slaughtered, on Twitter. A lot of United fans saying it's a complete waste of time. I'm with Tone. And sorry, what's your name, dude? Daniel. Sorry, Dan. And I'm with Daniel as well. And because his off the ball play and the way that he moves defenders and central midfielders around is perfect. And this is why you're seeing Rashford get so much more space, because Weghorst is moving them out of position. But he does need goals. He does need a couple of goals. I'll give him that. And when he's on form, by the way, he's a really good finisher. He's a deft finisher as well. He's not just this 6'6" lump. He's a quite deft player. The other thing is, and I'm sorry, Barry, but I will just cover this quickly. We're not actually playing to his strengths, because Weghorst is playing for the middle with Rashford to the left and Anthony to the right. And now please tell me the last time with any accuracy and consistency those two players put a cross in or played the ball in to where Weghorst will be, because his movement within the box is great. So you have to take that into account as well, I'm afraid. And at the minute, we don't want Rashford crossing too much, because he's putting the ball in the back of the net. So, you've got to look at it from that point of view. But, I thought he played really well. I gave him a 7 last night, because you're talking about his overall performance, not just the amount of times he touches the ball, but what he does for the team was really crucial last night, I thought. So
It's interesting you mentioned that. It's a brilliant segue into two things there. A reminder to you all to get onto the poll because you are choosing our player of the match. We've had 21 votes so far, so keep going. But your options are Rashford, David De Gea, Casemiro, and Fred. Unfortunately,
Why does De Gea get in there?
I don't think De Gea
I
should
will
be in there.
get to De Gea, don't you worry about it. Before we do, let's talk, Tony. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
Red redemption, because just after that corner, when we're all wondering what's going on, what does he do? He puts in a tasty little ball for Marcus Rashford, who had no right to be scoring from an angle of less than about 10 degrees. It was amazing.
It was strange, wasn't it? Because Ter Stegen he was having a really good game, and I was quite surprised when the ball hit the back of the net. It must have been just power. I bet you if you asked Ter Stegen if I got into the Barca dressing room and said, what the hell? You explain to me why you let that in. He probably went like that. He wouldn't have a clue how it went past him. Really strange goal, but good finish.
Tony, what was your thoughts?
It's the duality of Fred, isn't it? Fred can do things where you scratch your head and you go, is he a professional footballer? And then he does things where you go, Jesus, this guy's dynamite. He's such, it's the duality of him. I'll give Fred this because a lot of people wrote him off last season. I gave him some like bad praise last season. Well, negative, not negative, but almost, I did say that he wasn't really fit to wear the shirt last season, like a lot of players. But I think this season, under Ten Hag, he's become a lot more of the sort of player that I think suits his style of game. He's not a centre, he's not a CDM. He's a pressing midfielder. And he's really good in these high pressure situations where he's trying to win the ball of players. And you know what? He's actually a good passer of the ball as well. I think that's a really understated part of his game. And, kudos to him because a game like that, I don't think it was a mistake. I agree with Stu. I don't think that's like a thing where I go, oh my God, it's just a well-worked corner. I could talk about De Gea. We'll move on to that in a bit. But Fred redeems himself with a great pass. Rashford, what words do we need to speak about Rashford anymore? The guy can score from anywhere against anyone at this point. But Fred is so underrated in so many ways. I know people go, he's rubbish and stuff of other fans, but I've watched every United game this season, and I think bar a handful of games, he's been fairly consistent. Look at the Spurs game, for example. He was my man of match that game at home. He was brilliant. And yesterday, he was probably one of my contenders for man of match. He was brilliant. But it's like the duality of Fred, though. He does these things where, you scratch your head and you go, why? And then he does these things where you go, he's brilliant. And it's the duality of Fred. It's always like that with him.
Well, we talk about the duality of Fred. Let's talk, Daniel, about the singularity of Marcus Rashford, who it's just been unreal. Because not only did he score that goal, he then went on about 5, 6, 7 minutes later. Brilliant run down the right-hand side again, gets himself in there, gets the cross in, looking as if it's going to be a perfect cross to get to one of our guys in the middle, but didn't need to because it was turned into their own net by a Barcelona player whose name has it. Gouda, was it?
No, it's Kunde.
Thank you. What did you make of that? Because I couldn't quite believe it. I was sat there, 1-0 down. I'm thinking, is this going to go a little bit tricky now? And before you know it, we're ahead.
He's just unplayable, isn't he? At the minute, he's absolutely unplayable. But I think Rashford in particular got criticism that wasn't deserved last season. I'm a bit. It's a weird one to say, but I was a fan of Ollie and Ollie's football, and Rashford under Ollie was very similar. Absolutely smashed it. He's hurt his back. He's rushed back, shouldn't have rushed back, and he's had a bit of a bad season last season. And he's just back. He's back to the form we expected from the season before. But you can see the confidence that he's got. I was actually a little bit disappointed with him yesterday because the chance where he's in and he swings at it, and it's a bit of a wild one.
Weghorst would have put that away.
Yeah, he could have just slid it across the Weghorst just by popping his head up. But I genuinely would not be shocked. Ten Hag will sit him down today, show him that, and say, you could have popped your head up there. And I think it's that sort of man management that's helping him. And Benny McCarthy as well. Shout out to Benny McCarthy because he's come in.
And play to Weghorst.
Charles.
I'll tell you what. If you're
quite often you see players. Sorry, you often see players really giving it their hands, don't you? Like, why didn't you pass? And his seemed a bit more half-hearted. His was a little bit more like, you probably should have passed, but you are about.
You can't know, though. This is the thing, isn't it? It's the point I was making a few minutes ago, that you've got Rashford on one side, you've got Anthony on the other. The chance of the ball coming into you is quite small. In fact, it's minute. But, Benny McCarthy, look, if Ruud van Nistelrooy had been in that position and Rashford hadn't crossed it, he'd have punched Rashford in the face on the pitch and in the changing room, because and this is what you need. Look, Vegas might have gone into the change room and said, "Listen, mate, I'm there for a reason. I was there. I was clear. It's a tap in for me. We're 3-1 up. We're maybe going back to Old Trafford 3-2 winners." And this is the message. I think you're right, Daniel, that Ten Hag's saying, and Benny McCarthy for definite, because So I agree.
No, it's fine, because my next question was going to be for you, because we had a bit of a moment there where we had a free kick for a foul should have had a free kick, for a foul on Rashford. There was a question as to whether it was a penalty. It was clearly outside the box. Go down the other end, Fred gives away a free kick. I feel like I'm saying that pretty much every time somebody attacks now. Fred gives away a free kick on the edge of the area. Again, duality of Fred. You know that's coming. First things first, Ten Hag is calling for a red card there. Did you think it was a foul? And if so, surely that's a red card.
It's a tricky one. When you're caught offside, the player I'm talking about, I'm not talking about Rashford offside, I'm talking about your offside of the player that you're marking. And when you're against somebody like Rashford who's got pace, you've got two choices, okay? You either allow him to progress and then hope that your goalkeeper comes in and cuts the yardage off and slows Rashford down in some way, because you're not going to catch him, or you do something about it. You literally do. You do something about it, and you take him out. Koundé
did something like that in a game once, didn't he?
Yeah.
An important time of the game, just took the leg straight out.
Koundé was never going to get him. And I can't remember who was slightly behind him, alongside him.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who it was. And I thought he got his positioning wrong. I know he was heading back towards the goal line, but Rashford was never going to cut in, so they were never going to meet them two. So he should have helped Koundé out. He didn't. For me, letter of the law, it's a red card. It really is. People will say and argue that Rashford was going away from goal, but that makes no difference. It's always the last man. And there's no way that that other player, whoever it was going to come in and make a difference. But I don't think Koundé had a chance, to be honest. He had to do it. He had no choice.
It was a strange one, really, because like Mickey's just said, Rashford said it after the interview. Why is he going to go down in that area?
Yeah,
he knows he's beat the man. He knows it. And he's gone,
Yeah.
if the referee can't see it because he's so many yards behind him, fair enough. But the linesman should have the thought of the state of mind to understand that that's a foul and flag it. And that's what's not happened. And obviously, ultimately, Fred makes the foul at the other end. And that could have easily have been, a goal for Barcelona. And it's just there, like these things. Like, I understand VAR didn't have checked it because it was outside the area. It's not a penalty, but surely VAR should be looking at things that are potential red card challenges. But they don't, because at the end of the day, it's not a penalty. So if it was in the box, you know what I mean. And it's a strange one. Every week I talk about VAR, and the more I talk about it, the more I just wish it wasn't in football, even though it benefits both teams and it gives us the benefit sometimes. You're picking out things a lot more than you're picking benefits out of it and praises for it. So yeah,
I think Stu would agree with you there, and that was the other piece of breaking news that happened just as we left, that Lee Mason, he of VAR notoriety, has not just been stepped down from VAR, but is now no longer part of the PGMOL. So I'd like to say good luck, and I hope your life goes great.
On that Rashford point a second, can anybody remember against, I believe it was Burnley, a couple of seasons ago now, Luke Shaw did a tackle, the ball went up the other end, we scored, it got pulled back, and Luke Shaw got a yellow card. Yeah. So what I find really annoying is if Barcelona would have gone to the other end and scored, it's highly likely they would have gone back and sent Koundé off and give us a free kick. It's only because it's not ended in an action or something they can look at that it's not been looked at. It's so strange because, in my opinion, it's such a nailed-on decision. You think about the angle that Rashford actually scored from. His angle's so much better on his stronger foot. And Koundé's basically gone, I'm in trouble here.
He has. And look, any good centre-half would do that. It's exactly what I would have done. Koundé did nothing that I wouldn't have done, or any other centre-half.
It'll be a red card next week. That's the problem.
Daniel, also to add to that, Ten Hag said, "Look, it changes the complete dynamic of the fixture, the time, the game at the Nou Camp, and the game next week at Old Trafford, because Koundé is no longer a part of that team." And it's also these things like, Barca fans and Xavi were piping up about the Fred handball, which is fair enough. I can completely understand, their frustration at that. But if that red card is given, that situation probably doesn't happen. And, it's these things that accumulate, and they create situations that they don't need to happen if the game's officiated properly. And it seems like every week, like Ten Hag for once, actually stood up for himself and actually said, look, you know what, this is, because usually he just stands there and lets the refs do what they need to do. And, he says, look, we can't let the refs influence the result. We have to play well enough to get the result. But Ten Hag yesterday looked at it and went, look, it's starting to annoy me now. And he got a yellow card for it.
I genuinely think that F's frustration in this particular situation is coming from, we've got a final 3 days later. If we take a 3-1 lead, 2-1 lead from the Nou Camp to Old Trafford, his team sheet might be a little bit different with the final coming up. But he's not going to be able to do that now. He's probably going to, because he's a manager, he wants to win everything. He's probably going to put out his strongest team. If there's any rotation, I think it will come against Leicester.
I think it will rotate against Leicester. I'm with you, Dan, and I think Maguire will come in.
Yeah.
Against Leicester, and he'll rejig it, play Martinez maybe, and Maguire.
Maguire 1-0, Eder 90th minute, fantastic, beautiful.
Well, look, I'm a big Maguire fan. I like him.
I just want to see the redemption. We got it from Sancho the other week. So I just want to see that redemption celebration. We need it.
Some United fans on Twitter will still say he's a fridge, an £80 million fridge. They won't give him any credit for anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think, to be fair, most United fans on Twitter, just like we were discussing it earlier, they couldn't even enjoy an amazing game and a 2-2 at Barcelona.
Right.
I think it's the modern fan. If it's not a 5-0 win, they're not happy.
Oh, we know all about that, Dan. We know all about that. Listen, I was going to ask you all a bit later on about the handball, but this seems like the perfect time to go for it. Was it a handball by Fred? Would you have been given a penalty in that, Stu?
Yeah.
It was. I've seen him given them, and like last night, you've seen him not given. But the problem is nobody knows the handball rule. If we're all honest, nobody really knows what's handball and what isn't anymore. We all saw the Souček. Was it Souček?
Souček, the save.
We all saw that, and he gets away with it because they said he was falling down or something ridiculous. So
his arms under his body is the law.
Yeah,
what a saver!
Yeah, it was a good save. Yeah. For me, it was a handball, but I'm kind of, like I said, like guys, I'm old school. I don't like VAR. I never did. I just let the ref do it. Refs make mistakes, players make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. I think with VAR in, the refereeing's got worse actually since VAR's been in, and so. But it was a penalty, and we got away with it. And who's to say we don't deserve to get away with it anyway?
Well, let's not forget the only reason why we're even playing this game. It's because of
correct.
the ridiculous ball that Martinez got against him that came off his leg.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
And the only reason he was suspended as well was because of that yellow card.
We wouldn't even be playing this game now. Yeah. We wouldn't have had to play Palace before Arsenal. So, nightmare.
No, you're absolutely right. It's
Dan, you thought it was a penalty? Stu says yes. Dan,
yeah. When he did it, it's that little movement of the arm that does it for me.
Yeah.
And Tony, you're the full house.
It's a unnatural position, unfortunately, but we're fortunate that it wasn't given. And I think you get that some bad luck, we get some good luck in return because like I said, it evens itself out. Xavi will watch that game. Xavi would have watched that game back last night and gone, yes, this afternoon or this morning, and would have looked on and said, look, to be fair, in hindsight, maybe it levels itself out. Koundé shouldn't have been on the pitch. We probably should have had a penalty.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's how it goes. Football's one of them games now. Both managers were fair enough to be aggrieved after the game because, I can understand.
Well, I'm going to say no, just purely because I didn't see it. I'm going to have to put the Arsene Wenger one. Honest, I was so busy writing my notes. And I didn't see it. And they went, handball. I'm not rewinding for that. I don't really care. They'll tell me.
Please have a football fan base.
So there we go. listen, there's one more goal we've got to talk about before we press on with anything else. Tony, that goal from Rafinha, it was one of those where I was like, well, Lewandowski must have got something on it. And he didn't. The problem is neither did Varane and neither did De Gea or the post on this occasion. So no help there. What did you think of the goal?
You know, it's one of them goals. It happens every so often where, you know, there's just so many areas of doubt. De Gea can't really make a decision. I am one of those people, though, where I've always thought the keeper should at least try and attempt to make a save. He wouldn't got anywhere near it. But, you know, like, you know, when you see these world-class goals from out like 30 yards out and the goalkeeper just stands there, just dive for it. Just look like you're trying a little bit, you know what I mean? Or just, but, you know, there weren't much he could really do about that. I think Varane, you know, it's all about Lewandowski's movement. If Lewandowski's not in that position there, Varane easily blocks it. It's just the fact that Lewandowski's creating this. And that's what a brilliant striker does. He creates this confusion with the defence and the goalkeeper. He's well onside, so he's well in his rights to interfere with the game and influence the shot, which he did. And, you know, I thought Rafinha, you know, I know he's had a lot of critics since going to the Nou Camp, but for me, he was their man of the match last night. I thought he was brilliant.
Dan, do you think the same sort of thing? Is Lewandowski walking in at the end of the game there going, did you like my dummy there?
I think it's just a perfect cross for every sense of the word. So I was always taught if you hit a cross and it misses your strikers, it bounces in, because the corridor of uncertainty, we call it, it's De Gea cannot move, because if he moves and he gets a touch, or Lewandowski gets a touch, he looks stupid because think Jordan Pickford the other day, he just looks ridiculous in the middle. Was it Jordan Pickford? No, Ramsdale in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, it's just a perfect cross. And Lewandowski's just a handful, isn't he? There's not a lot you could do. It's just one of them.
Brilliant. And then, Stu, I'm just going to get you to sort of summarise the end, really, which to me was highlighted by Casemiro doing the best clearance that's ever been seen by smashing it against his own post.
Yeah.
That's just the level of confidence that man's got.
Yeah, look, as a defender, not that Casemiro is a defender, but as a defender, the worst thing you can do is get caught facing goal in and around the penalty area at the 6-yard box. And this was Varane's issue, by the way, for the Rafinha goal. When you look at Rafinha, and you're right about Lewandowski. Lewandowski moves Varane. Varane then is kind of facing the goal, so to speak. Rafinha is just putting it in. He's going for a strike. There's no two ways about it, but it's absolutely impossible because he's trying to mask, or he's trying to use Lewandowski to mask the football. So he's trying to make the ball invisible until it's too late for De Gea to get anywhere near it, and it's almost impossible. So when you've got a melee of players in and around the 6-yard, the 12-yard spot, it's and you get caught goal facing, it's an absolute nightmare. So I felt for a bit for Casemiro, but look, and I'll say this, his job is to get involved, his job is to disrupt, to tackle, to defend, to clear, and he takes your chances, I'm afraid, in areas like that. And I thought he did. I thought he had a good game overall, really, Casemiro. Yeah. So it's just one of those things.
Just to repeat, I don't blame De Gea for the second goal at all. Like it was completely. No. I don't want people to scream it going, Tony thinks that De Gea should save everything. I definitely don't. It was a goal. You know, he was second favourite with that shot. But I'm just saying, I always like goalkeepers at least attempting the dive. But you know, you can't.
The thing is, Tony, if he was to the right, as where De Gea is, he was slightly to the left, wasn't he? But if he was to the right, Rafinha might have just dinked him over to his left. In his right anyway. It was impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's pretty. I've watched it again.
and then he goes and plucks one out of the air from whoever it was.
You know what? Like I said, the duality of Fred earlier, the duality of David De Gea, because David De Gea can do these things that he makes the hardest save look so easy, but then he makes the simplest stuff look so hard. And it's annoying because you're there like what it's almost there like the things that he doesn't have to, but he has to focus extremely hard on. He does brilliantly, but the little things like the corner, the first goal. I think Paul Scholes, me and Paul Scholes had a similar like obviously I've not spoken to Scholes, but I'm saying that I kind of agree with what he said. Like if I'm being super cynical, the pace on that header for the first goal isn't that much, and De Gea is almost scared of barging with the post there. And I understand he doesn't want to collide with a post, but maybe he'll look back at that game. Oh, God, I definitely don't have an agenda against David De Gea. Even though I've written an article this week saying that we should be looking into a new goalkeeper. It's not an agenda. I just think there's certain areas where I think Ten Hag's going to want to progress in that De Gea kind of lacks in a little bit, but that's not to knock De Gea at all. I think he's still a top class shot stopper.
I don't disagree with that because I don't think Alonso caught it.
No, I don't.
Brilliantly. Alonso always scores against us, doesn't he? Don't ask me why. He always does. But I don't think he caught it properly. And I'm not saying it took De Gea by surprise, but you've got to take the hit on your shoulder on that one. I'm afraid. I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, again, that's part of the reason why De Gea was chosen, and this in particular was a brilliant moment as well. By the way, this one here was unbelievable. It was just a catch and a half out of nowhere. It was superb. But I've written his name down 3 or 4 times second half for saves. Not necessarily outstanding saves, not ones where he had to do an absolute worldie, but certainly ones where if he wasn't in the goal or was in the wrong position, we could well have been looking at a sort of a 3-2, 4-2 defeat. So, that's why I chose him, and I'll stand by it. But there we go. What I will say is my final question comes to you, Daniel, on this. And Mickey's mentioned it a little bit earlier on here about Garnacho. He was the only substitute. He was the only one we brought on 81 minutes, which says a lot, I think, about how well the team were playing. And possibly also alludes to what changes might be made against Leicester if he's willing to give all of them the whole game. Number one, how do you think Garnacho did when he came on? He had an opportunity, I think, but didn't really have too much of an opportunity. It certainly wasn't gilt-edged. And would you start him for the second leg? Do you think that he potentially played himself into that rather than Sancho, perhaps?
I think the rotation will come against Leicester. So I think if he's going to come in, I think Garnacho will come in against Leicester. I think he did all right when he came on. He had a chance that reminded me loads of Torres versus Barcelona, where the ball was dropping out of the sky, and if he could just knock it in front of him, he's in. And he just couldn't do it. But he did well. I think the rotation will come against Leicester if it's going to come. I genuinely think Ten Hag thinks they can win everything. And it's just such a good mentality to have. We might come looking at the end of the season thinking that his own success has sort of caused an issue, but I'm all for it. Go for it. See what happens. It's an exciting time for the squad, to be fair.
I've got to be honest, I'm not sure what Connor's been buying from Asda. Whatever it is. He's
what he's been buying from Asda, yeah. Just on Garnacho, Barry. I you guys must have seen it. I saw a lot of people on Twitter going, "Oh, we didn't make any subs, blah 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 blah." But there are times in football matches where substitutes can be actually detrimental.
So I was playing FIFA while I was watching the game because I was streaming.
Sorry, I wasn't having a pop at you when I was.
No. And I made a point on stream as I was watching, and it was just one of them where the performance was that good. He was too scared to change the players because they was all doing so. So what would you have changed? Because everything was going so well.
You disrupt yourself.
Yeah. If you're playing a game of FIFA 23, you'd make them substitutions, but it's not a game of FIFA. If he made a substitution and he went wrong, he'd be livid with himself. So I think he's waited until it's gone slightly wrong and then he's made the changes, which in hindsight is a brilliant idea, but I think he did the right thing.
Safe change anyway, isn't it? It's Garnacho. It's a safe change.
Also, and the bench wasn't amazing yesterday, I don't think.
No, I was going to say, I think the bench wasn't very good. I was going to agree with Daniel. I think the strength of the bench was maybe half the reason that Ten Hag didn't want to make those changes, especially at the Nou Camp against Barcelona. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm looking at the bench here. He could have brought on Lindelof, Maguire, Dalot, Pellistri, Alanga, Iqbal, and Maino. They're not. I mean, you could have brought on Pellistri for the like instead of Sancho if you really wanted to. But besides that, I don't think there was many, unless there was a defensive issue and they needed an injury as such. I don't think there was really much you could do.
The first three you've named on there would probably be three of the rotations for Leicester. Lindelof, Maguire, and Dalot in. So that might be a reason that he's not brought them on as well. And
I think Martinez might play on Sunday.
Just because he was banned for this one.
Yeah, I think so. And Sabitzer definitely is coming back on Sunday as well.
Will come back in. I do think if that's the choice for the rotation, I don't think he'll do it against Barca. It's just such a shame that we've got Newcastle 3 days later. I think
I was just going to say, if we move on to the Leicester thing now, because obviously we've been an hour on our review and we can move on to our little preview. So we'll come straight back to you there, Daniel. But just to confirm, unlikely to be a McTominay, Obviously, no Casemiro still banned. We are
Martial
expecting
injured?
Martinez and Sabitzer to be available. So yeah, talk to us. What do you think the starting lineup is likely to be? You don't have to go obviously through all the players, but what are the main changes? And this will come round to all of you for that. Do you expect any changes? And if so, what?
I would expect Maguire to come in for sure. Not for Luke Shaw, just
I was
for
just
Shaw.
going to say.
No, I think Maguire will come in. Garnacho will probably come in. Sabitzer will come in. Dallo for Wan-Bissaka, probably. I think it will just be probably 3 or 4 changes from yesterday's team. So, because it's good, it should be good enough to beat Leicester. And then, yeah, I was reading Newcastle have played, I think, 3 games or 4 games since the semi-final, and we've played 7 or 8. And it's just such a shame that it's fell that way, if that makes sense. And again, not to harp on about it, but it goes back to that one decision for handball, and we wouldn't be in this sort of fixture congestion that we're in. It would be a lot smoother. But no, I think 3 or 4 changes, nothing too much. It doesn't need to be like some people want 11 changes and go full strength again, but nothing major, just a few changes, and we should have enough to beat Leicester.
I'd like to see a few players make. I think Leicester's one of them games. Let's be realistic here. I think Ten Hag must be looking at. Well, actually, I don't know what Ten Hag thinks. Whatever I think Ten Hag's thinking, I'm completely wrong. It wouldn't surprise me. He makes no change. Obviously, regarding the changes, Casemiro coming in has to go out on Sunday.
Yeah.
But Ten Hag. But I look at it like Leicester's really you can throw not a throwaway game, but if we lose that game or draw that game, in the grand scheme of things, for top 4. It's not really going to bite us in the arsehole that much, considering that we've got such a head start over the team in 5th.
But I genuinely think that Ten Hag is looking at the weekend's fixtures, for example, and he's looking at that game. And if we win and Newcastle beat whoever, I think, is it Liverpool they've got this week?
Yeah.
Or lose to Liverpool. Somewhere in the back of his mind, we are only 5 points behind Man City. So the longer we can stay in touch, the further into the season, I think Gary Neville said it. Roy Keane. You've got to be ready to pounce. The chance is still there. It's not completely gone. I genuinely think it would just be a few changes, nothing major, because I think in the back of Ten Hag's mind, we can go far in all of it.
And Stu, I wanted to add that to your points that you make about the starting lineup. Is it a case of that we're trying to catch City and Arsenal, or is it more of a case of we're trying to push further away from Newcastle and Spurs?
No, it's actually more about the squad getting game time because, as we've proven with the loss of Casemiro, Sabitzer's coming in and done quite well, actually, but you get suspensions, you get injuries. If you are a player and you've had very little game time, it's quite difficult deep into the season to really find your form. It takes 2, 3, maybe 4 games to do it. So the changes, subtle that they may be, he's not actually thinking about City. He's not thinking about Newcastle. He's thinking about, well, what happens if we pick up an injury here or a suspension there? I've got to make sure I've got players with legs ready to go. So the Maguire introduction Sunday, I think needs to happen. So I think it'll be Maguire Martinez. If Dallo's fitter, I'd maybe take Wan-Bissaka out and put Dallo in just to get him more game time. Although Wan-Bissaka's been absolutely superb. It's a difficult one for any manager and any player because any player wants to play all the time, but you've got to see the bigger picture. And I know he's quite defiant, Ten Hag, and I like his defiance. But to me, sometimes you've got to look at where I can be more potent. Can I be more potent against Barcelona? Get into the knockout stage, by the way. We only get into the knockout stage with the Europa League. We don't make the final. And then how am I going to go against Newcastle? Because as the lads are quite rightly pointed out, they'll probably draw against Liverpool this weekend, and then they've got a 6-day break, haven't they, or something like that? They're not playing midweek.
8 days.
8 days. There you go. An 8-day break before they take us on at Wembley. So he's got an issue as Ten Hag, and it's now how you utilise the play. So unfortunately, the Leicester games, although I agree with Daniel, he's going to want to beat Leicester. The Leicester game for me is the one where you're going to make the the changes.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what Stu said. What I was going to say about the wholesale changes wasn't because I want us to lose. I'm just saying, like, I think Ten Hag will look at that and go, look, let's mitigate the risk here. I've got 2 big games in the next week ahead of this. If we lose or draw against Leicester, or we don't pick up a win, or we pick up a very difficult win against Leicester, it's not the end of the world, because at the end of the day, we're still in the top 4. If Newcastle lose on Saturday as well, which could very likely happen, Newcastle are in a poor run of form, by the way, in the last few weeks.
They are.
You know, who's to say, look, we might not be ahead of, we might be going further and further behind Arsenal and City. But I think for Ten Hag, look at it realistically. We've got a Europa League game against Barcelona on Thursday, a cup final against Newcastle on the Sunday. You've got to kind of mitigate the risk here and kind of choose what's the most appropriate option for each possible game. But saying that, like Dan said, it wouldn't surprise me on Sunday. Ten Hag goes full bolt, goes screw it. I don't care about the injuries. We'll just go for it.
He just wants the 3 points.
Yeah, he just wants which I can respect, but obviously the optimist in me wants it to succeed for the rest of the season. The realist in me knows that this amount of games is unrealistic for a professional athlete, let alone top level athletes like in the Premier League.
I think this is the thing, though. You know, the point here that Connor's put on, the title race is still on. I feel like he's being a bit mischievous there, Stu, if I'm honest with you. But by the same token, it's not far off. And we're talking a lot about changes. I just want to point out the last time we played Leicester, it was only a 1-0 win. Sancho scored it. And this is when they were in the bottom 3. They've just come off the back of a pretty hefty win over Spurs.
The front 4 is on fire.
Yeah, it is. Tete's coming in and doing a really good job.
This is what I mean. So they're just starting to come together. And, you know, you look at the way our team was when we played them. It was Delova, Varane, Martinez, Malacia. So our back 5 is pretty much what you expect. The difference is going to be the midfield. It was McTominay, Ericsson, and Fernandes, of course, before. There's obviously going to be at least 2 changes in that. But Elanga, Sancho, and Rashford. Rashford wasn't quite in the free scoring form that he's in now. But it's going to be a tricky one, isn't it, boys? I mean, you know, Stu, you can respond to this one by all means, but we've got to be careful because this is a side that's on the up. It's not just a guaranteed 3 points.
I think the interesting thing is, by the way, you're in a title race on match 1, you know, until it's mathematically impossible for you not to be in a title race. That's how footballers look at it, you know, at any level. And so you're always in a title race. And, you know, we're kind of in and around where we need to be. Actually, I'd rather be in our position right now rather than City's and Arsenal's, because I think we're just there. You just keep moving, you keep moving, you keep moving, and then if the opportunity arises, you take it. And if it doesn't, we are way, 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 way further than any fan at the beginning of the season would have expected. Okay. In terms of Leicester, I expect us to beat Leicester anyway. I think it'll be quite a very easy 2-0. I know they're playing quite well at the moment, and we always struggle against Leicester. Certainly, you know, through the middle, they've not been great this season, but they're a good unit through the middle. I just think we've got too much, and you've got to have a look at the way that if Garnacho was to play, the way that Rashford plays, the way that Sabitza's settling into the team, the way that, you know, we're defending very, very well. I think it will be a tough game, but a winnable game, and I fully expect us to win 2-0.
It's one of them games that I wish Van der Beek was still fit for. You know, like a McTominay, it'd be the perfect game for him to come in, get 90 minutes under their belt. You know, they're still very good professional footballers, good Premier League level players who could do a job. And, you know, right now it's just like these, you know, the injuries were going to come to us at some point. I have enough faith in Ten Hag and the coaching staff to look at it and look at the most appropriate situation and go, look, this is the team that's going to. I'd like to see Rashford have a little bit of a rest, if I'm being honest, for like coming as a substitute and this like have a half an hour cameo or something, or a 20-minute cameo if needed. But it's obviously, like I said, whatever Ten Hag does, I'll fully back because the guy can do no wrong at the moment. And
absolutely. Dan, we're going to come to you in a second. Stu, I know you need to slip off. So
I do. Thank you, guys.
Is that your prediction, 2-0, you said?
I'm going 2-0, and I'm going to go with Maguire or a towering header.
Love it.
Stu, thanks.
Cheers, boys. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Tony, Dan. Cheers, mate. Dan, we'll just come back to you now with your thoughts on the Leicester game and what you think the score is going to be.
I'm going to go for a tough game, 1-0 win. I think he'll make changes, but it still should be enough to beat Leicester. I think it might be a bit of a scrappy game, and if we can just nick a 1-0, well, he'll be well happy. I'd like to see Fernandes get a rest, but it's not going to happen because he's just a machine. He just seems to be able to play and play and play and play. So, yeah, I'd just be happy with 3 or 4 rotated, see if we can get the win, and then see what comes next week. It's a big 2 games after this one, but this one's massive as well.
Fair enough. So a cheeky 1-0 is what Daniel's saying. Tony, what's your thoughts on the score?
The optimist in me wants to say exactly like Daniel, a scrappy 1-0 win, but I can see us picking up a draw or even Leicester. Leicester look really good at the moment, and I do think Ten Hag has to rest a few players at the moment. Obviously, with the situation, like ultimately a season's 38 games, you can potentially not to disparage Leicester or not give them the credit they're due if they beat us. But what I'm saying is, if Leicester win with a depleted Man United team, but we've got a Man United team fully rested for Barcelona and Newcastle, and then we go back to the league and go on a good run, I think ultimately take that. But I'll say 1-0, scrappy 1-0. I think Ten Hag, if anyone could do it, it's Ten Hag and this United team. But there will be quite a few changes. I can see 3 or 4 big changes coming in with Maguire. I'd like to see Lindelof play. I think Lindelof hasn't played for a start of the game in a little while. I'll rate him quite a lot.
I think this is the thing. We've got some great players who can step in, and that is the nice part of having that depth. It's just the ability for them to knit themselves together, I suppose. So Benny's gone 3-0. Mickey has gone for 2-1 United, but a hard ground-out win, I think he's going for there. Mm-hmm. Dav also going for 2-1. I'm not sure what Connor's going for, but he's going for an average age of about 7, I think, based on what he wanted to go on each flank. Let's see if I can find it again. Here we are. Not quite, because Weghorst brings it up a bit. But yeah, Pellistri, Garnacho and Weghorst in attack, which would be interesting to see, if nothing else. He's going for 1-2, which I assume is in our favour.
I think he meant Leicester.
You kind of need to be a bit clearer.
No, 2. Oh, yeah. I was going to say.
Well, you're the host, it's your channel. You can't be saying stuff like that. Put the clientele off, mate. But yeah, so very good. Thank you very much. Right, before we press on with anything else there, we need to talk quickly about our player of the match poll, which we have completed. There were 37 votes. I can confirm Fred came last. He got 8%.
Really?
Which is what I thought, to be honest with you. Fred was the one that I was scrabbling about for. So that
I thought Fred was quite poor in the first half. He was really good.
I thought the second half he was brilliant.
Yeah, but well, duality of Fred. We said it, didn't we?
Duality of Fred, yeah.
Absolutely. So, he was the one who I thought would be 4th. The one that I thought would be 3rd came 3rd, which was Casemiro. I thought he was solid, did well, but it wasn't necessarily above and beyond, which left it between Marcus and David. Now, I'm not going to lie, I voted for David just because I knew what everybody else was going to vote for. But yes, it was Marcus Rashford that won it in the end, and not surprising really, because the man is on fire. So well done there. Leicester are indeed on 2 wins in a row, but I mean, to be fair, we're unbeaten in like about 700, it feels like, at the minute. So
well, it's that this is what I mean about the him wanting to just get something from Leicester. It's winning mentality just breeds winning mentality, don't it? So you don't really want to give away. I can't see him making wholesale changes to give away a result, because he's just not in his nature. He'll know that the more games they win, the bigger the run.
Absolutely. And Liqueur's gone for 3-0. But we're not putting that up on screen. Kids might watch it. But, way it goes. But I've got no problems involving you in the conversation, and 3-0 it is. So there we go. Last things last, Mr. Hulk Hogan. Oh, you're a little bit late. Go back and watch it. We've had the conversations about Qatar. We have mentioned it, and there will be proper shows on that as and when the proper news becomes available, rather than it just being what we've got. And 3 wins, says Benny, if you include the cup. Why not? They can include the cup. They've had a pretty bad season, so let's give them something to smile about there. Let's hope there's nothing for them to smile about on Sunday. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening. As we said, we've spoken about the Barcelona game. Superb. I can't wait for next week's one. We'll be back again, reviewing and previewing, as we seem to be doing quite a lot at the moment. So we'll be here next Friday, I would think, where we will know by that point whether or not we are into the next round of the Europa League, whether something rather unfortunate has happened. But we shall find out. By that point, again, as well, we'll also be previewing Newcastle, and we'll have a little bit more of an idea as to who can play and who can't, and whether or not we're only down to 3 trophies, or if we're still going for the quadruple. Who knows? It might not be a quadruple, but it's nice to mention it while it's about, isn't it? If it's good enough for City, it's good enough for us. And that seems to be the way that we're talking right now. So, thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. Thanks for in the comments. Connor will be back on Sunday. We'll be back on the Women's Channel on Monday. And keep an eye out for the Women's Channel tomorrow. We've got a nice special drop-in, all based on Fuso and her loan that she's doing over in Germany at the moment. So, we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Yeah.